I want to welcome everyone to the 25 Quicksand Area Holiday Roadshow. This is one of our favorite programs that we do each year, and I'm glad that we have a large crowd here today. So thank you all for coming. We do a little educational component each time that we do this, and this year, November is National Diabetes Month. Is there anyone in here that has diabetes, knows somebody that has diabetes, or cares for diabetes? Just about everybody in here has some type of connection with diabetes. So this is a good topic for us to talk about. But what time of year are we getting into? The holidays. And what happens during the holidays? We eat. And are we always eating the healthy things? Okay. So if we do a little planning, we can be a little healthier. So there is things that we can do. Does anybody in here travel for the holidays, whether it's Christmas or Thanksgiving? Okay, so when you travel, is it easy to stick with your diabetes plan? No. But if you are traveling by car or plane, there are some things that you can do. You can pack snacks that are healthier, like fruits, nuts, or whole grain crackers to snack on while you are traveling. I know when we are on a plane or in a car and we're on long trips, it's hard to get up and move around. But try to get up and move around as much as possible because it does help with having stretch breaks. And then we can be smart with special meals because our holiday meals are usually packed full of rich foods and sweets. But you don't have to miss out. You just have to plan around that. Make sure that the first thing you do is fill half your plate with the vegetables or a salad and eat those first. Make sure you start with a high fiber foods that helps fill you up quicker, and you will feel full for longer. But always make sure you do have protein in that, and because that will also help us feel fuller longer. You can choose smaller portions. I'm not saying not to have them at all, but smaller portions of breads, stuffing, or casseroles, because these are usually higher in carbohydrates. And then if you want a treat, make sure that you pick out your favorite treat and then just get a small amount of it. That way you are getting your fill of the sweets. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Try to avoid the sugary drinks. If you don't like plain water, add a little bit of lemon juice to it or add some fruit to it just to give it a little bit of taste. And then if you do drink alcohol, try to have that in moderation. Make sure that we are staying active during the holidays because when usually we are at Thanksgiving or Christmas, we sit at the table and eat and we stay there and talk because we're with people we've not seen in a while. So the thing is, try to avoid sitting for long periods of time, get up, move around, because physical activity helps manage our blood sugars. Get up, take a walk after you have your meal. Clean up the kitchen, take a walk as a family, and if you like to dance, you can turn some music on and dance, do a little jig there at the house and have a little dance competition. But you can also play games. Like if it's a pretty day, you can go outside, play kickball with the kids and all that. But even just short bursts of movement, they help with the blood sugars. And then make sure you don't forget to track your blood sugars. If you're testing, every day, make sure that you are still testing. Take all of your equipment with you if you are traveling and test every day and write that down. Keep a log of it. And that way you can amend your insulin or other medications as needed. And then holidays are stressful. How many people think they're not stressful? I don't see a hand raised up, so they're usually stressful. Even though that it's an enjoyable time, we do get a little bit stressed. And when you do get stressed, it can make your blood sugar levels, it can impact them. So just make sure that you take time to relax, breathe, and make sure you get enough sleep. How many people are getting 8 hours of sleep per night? I don't see a hand raised, well, maybe one. I don't even get it myself. So, but try to get your rest. If you have to lay down and take a nap, do that, but just stay on schedule. Even with your meals, if you're eating 6 small meals per day, continue with the 6 small meals per day. If you go to bed at 10 o'clock, try to go to bed at 10 o'clock and get up at your normal time. But you do need to make conscious choices to limit your commitments and allow extra time to avoid feeling rushed. So planning is a big part of any holiday. Make sure that you plan and you make sure you have enough time. Okay, so the next thing we are going to start with Kelsey Sebastian. She is the Breathitt County FCS agent, and we are going to have her come up to show her recipe and crafts.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so as Nanette said, I'm the agent in Breathitt County, and I know most of your faces, and I know you all have been here before, so if you remember anything about me, you know that I do not love the decor projects and the craft projects, so I typically try to pick something that is easier that everyone can do. Okay, but they're going to start passing my recipe out first. If anybody has a nut allergy, these do have pecans in them, so please let them know and they'll skip right over you. But the recipe is a white chocolate cranberry orange cookie. So this has a lot of very basic ingredients with a couple add-ins. So it's got melted butter in it, brown sugar, granulated sugar, so some of both to make it a little extra rich. Then it has eggs, vanilla, and orange extract for your flavoring. If you don't have orange extract and you have some fresh oranges, you can zest your orange and also use some of the fresh juice as well. And then for your dry ingredients, you've got all-purpose flour, salt, and baking soda. And once you combine all that, you get to your good stuff, okay? So your coconut, pecans, craisins, which of course are just dried cranberries, and then white chocolate chips. Now, again, if you do have a nut allergy, feel free to leave those out, but I do like a little extra crunch in my cookie, so I always add nuts in there. But you bake on 375, and typically I do about 10 minutes. These are a little smaller than I would bake normally, but since it was for a sample size, so one batch will make about 40 regular size cookies. The dough does freeze really well. I will usually, if I'm going to freeze it, I will go ahead and ball it up with my cookie scoop and then place it in a Ziploc bag already balled up, so all I have to do is pull it out and bake it, okay? So 375 for 10 minutes, and then just take it out and let it cool. They hold up pretty well. Hopefully you'll like that one. So moving on to our decor items. The first one is an embroidery hoop holiday wreath. Okay, so you could hang this inside or outside. How many of you all do anything with embroidery? Okay, how many of you have one of these just laying around the house? Okay, so this is a 12-inch size. You can do whatever size you want, but that'll just adjust the amount of material and how big you would want your decal to be, okay? So like I said, 12-inch. You can also not paint it, but I decided because the background of my fabric was black that it looked better with a black edge. So all I did was go in with some cheap acrylic paint and paint the outside ring. You don't even have to paint the inside ring because it's hidden in the back. Versus here you're seeing the front side and the edge, okay? We did one coat of that and that covered most of it. Of course, depending on how thin your paint is, you may have to do a second coat to get it totally covered. The next thing I did was I measured my fabric, and the way I did that, this was not scientific, is I took this apart and I put it on here like I normally would. And once I did that, and put it back in, I was able to go around the edge and cut. I did leave some extra because remember you're losing about 1/4 of an inch inside the form itself, so do not cut it too short or it'll come all the way through. I was also cutting it out of a huge piece of fabric. I think I got 6 yards because we're doing this at my office as a make and take, and so I wanted to be able to save as much as I could, so by measuring with the hoop itself I didn't have a whole lot of waste, okay? Other things you'll need for this one, you can use hot glue and put that on there, but you do not have to when you get to the top, and I'll show you in just a second. But then, again, just a basic brush for that paint. If you have any wire clippers when you go to do your add-ons, those stems are usually really thick, so you might need those. How many of you all have a Cricut at home? Anybody? How many of you know what a Cricut is? Okay, so I do not have a Cricut, but I have somebody in our town who does a lot of that. So she did this decal for me. This is an iron-on one. So once I had my fabric cut the right size, I put the fabric on my ironing board. I laid the decal over it. I put a thin washcloth on top of it just because the top of that had a plastic film that I was going to need to remove the lettering from, and I didn't want it to get too hot, but I also wanted it to be hot enough that it's going to adhere. So once I had that adhered, I was able to pull it off. So this size decal was a 10-inch when she cut it to fit the 12-inch form. So just make sure if you're doing that you get the lettering the right size to fit in your form. Once I had that finished, the last thing was to jazz it up. So I'm sure some of you have some old picks and stems that maybe you're not using in your tree this year. Maybe you'll be able to reuse. You could also put a bow on here if you wanted that. I liked the top portion because I wanted to be able to see my lettering better. But I just got a few different picks. These little snowy ones actually came on a really large pick that had about 20 branches coming off of it, and I was able to take my wire cutters in and cut those smaller stems off to be able to use it for more projects. But I started on the top of that with 2 stems about this size, and then I continued to build and add by going back in with my other greenery and just crisscrossing it until I got it as full as I wanted it. And once I had it as full as that, I went in with some basic floral tape. Now you can use the floral wire for this part as well, but I had some tape. And I went in and I bound that together, so whenever I was ready to attach it to the wreath, it wasn't falling apart as single pieces. So once I had that gathered together, I pulled my floral wire out. If you don't have floral wire and you eat a lot of bread, save your bread ties. You can pull those out and connect those. But if you can see here, I used the hoop portion here that allows you to adjust the size kind of as a base to attach that to, and I just went back and forth until I thought it was sturdy enough to hold up, and then I tied that off in a knot and cut my ends of my wire off so I could tuck it up there. So again, super easy. The longest portion of this is waiting for the paint to dry on the outside. Okay, so that's craft number 1. The next one are the decoupage coasters. That should be on the next page over. Okay, and again, super easy. This is an easy one even the kids could help do. Okay, so we started with the slate coaster. Now yours doesn't have to be slate. I wanted these to be heavy duty, so that's what I started with. I also know clearly that holds up with water well. We want to make sure we do end up with a waterproof surface in the end. If you have some at home that maybe you don't like the design on, but you know they're heavy duty, you could just cover them up. Okay, repurpose with what you have. So I started with the black one. So my first step, I went in with just some white acrylic paint. I did 2 coats on it to make sure I got all of the corners covered. Now again, if you wanted it to be a little more rustic, you could do a lighter coat, but I wanted my whole background to be white. So once I let those dry, and again that acrylic paint dries pretty fast, so this was not a lengthy project either, I selected what I was going to decoupage on there. Okay, how many of you have decoupaged before? Super easy, right? Anybody can do it. I liked the nutcrackers. Okay, so I started with some nutcracker napkins. I sliced this into the 4 areas right where it was already folded to kind of give myself a couple pieces to work with. And then once I had it apart, I was able to go back in with my scissors and cut around the edge. Now, you'll notice that the background of my napkin is white, which is why I painted the background of these white. But if you're doing a different color napkin and you don't want to get close to the edge, that may be a good place to start when choosing your color. So I did go as close as I could, but I also didn't want to lose all these little decorative items, and I'm not as skilled with the scissors as maybe other people might be, so get some sharp ones. But once I had all those pieces cut out, I did a layer of the decoupage glue on here, and then once it had started to set just a little bit, so it was a little tackier, I went in and laid each of my nutcrackers where I wanted them. I let that finish drying, and then I went back in with my sponge with more of the glue and did 2 coats over the top. You know, if you've used that glue before, it goes on white, but it will dry clear, okay? So I did 2 to 3 coats on a couple of these until they were totally set. Now you can stop at this step if you want to, okay? They clearly look cute just the way they are. But if you like them a little more jazzed up, which is what I ended up doing, I went in with some gold leaf. If you all have ever used this before, you know it is super delicate. And so I went in with some sheets of gold leaf and used that same decoupage glue, and I went around each of the corners until I had it as full as I wanted. And whenever I got finished with that, that's when the most important step comes in, okay? Again, we've used the decoupage on the outside of this, but you can still feel that it's paper on there. So the most important part, whether you put the gold leaf on the edge or not, is going back in with a clear acrylic spray on the outside. This will help seal that, and you'll be able to feel whenever you all come up later. You can run your hand over it, and it's totally slick now. The paper is totally sealed in. I did 2 coats of this. I will say, if you've never used this before, it is very, very strong. Please do not spray it inside your home. Use it outside. And then I typically will always set something like this on a paper plate or a piece of cardboard, because you're going to overspray when you use that, and you don't want it to get on whatever you're spraying on. So an old piece of cardboard, paper plate to finish that off. But once I let it dry, it's ready to use. So feel free to pick them up whenever you all come up to look at the projects later, and you'll be able to feel how slick it is. But again, if you don't want to do the gold leaf, but you still like the look of the gold edge, if you were to purchase one of the like chalk markers, they have a lot of metallic colors now. You could go around the edge with that as well, and it would kind of give the same look. It just wouldn't be as three-dimensional, obviously, as this one is. But again, these are all super simple, not a lot of time to do, so hopefully you'll feel like making one of those. Does anybody have any questions about those? All right. Next up is going to be Stacy Trent, the agent from Knott County.
All right, for my recipe, we're going to do a loaded baked potato dip. The ingredients you're going to need is 16-ounce container of sour cream, a package of ranch dip, 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese, a half a cup of bacon bits, 2 green onions, crackers, chips, or vegetables. So your steps, you're just going to add all of those ingredients to a bowl, and you're going to mix those together, and then you can serve it with crackers, chips, or vegetables, or you can even put it on a baked potato. And Lakin is passing those around for you. My first craft is a decoupage ornament. Your materials that you're going to need is a wooden blank. They look like this. You can order those on major stores, or you can find them in a hobby store. Mine came pre-drilled with the hoe. If yours do not, you will need a drill to drill holes so that you can hang them as an ornament. You will need either napkins like what Kelsey had, or you can also use scrapbook paper. In another county, they asked if you could use photos or Christmas cards. You can do that. I know I've got a couple ornaments that have my kids' pictures on them, and I just use those too. You will need decoupage, so I use Mod Podge. You're going to need some ribbon and jute string to make your ornaments. And what I did was I just took scrapbook paper and I cut my design out of the scrapbook paper. I put a layer of the Mod Podge down, and then I put the paper over top of that, and then I added another layer of the Mod Podge. And then I added a cute little ribbon to it. For the next one is a wood burning ornament, and all three of my crafts you're going to use the same material. So you're going to need that wooden blank round. You're going to need a drill if it doesn't already have a hole. On this one we're going to use a thing called torch paste. And it comes in a little containers like this. It's like an orange paste type stuff. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a silk screen transfer, and you can order these, and they come in different designs. You can get Christmas, you can get fall, Easter, any kind of home decor that you like, and you can use those. What you're going to do is you're going to take the design, and you're just going to peel it off the backing that it comes on, and these are reusable. So once you peel it off, you're going to add it to your surface, and then you're going to take either a paintbrush or a squeegee, and you're going to squeegee your torch paste onto your surface. And then you're going to peel this off. You can wash this, run it under the sink with water, and I just take a baby wipe and just wipe off the excess that's on it. Lay it down flat and let it dry, and then you can add it back to the backing that it came on. So they are reusable. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a heating tool, and you want to make sure that it's 700 degrees Fahrenheit. It heats up to that high, and you're going to burn in the torch paste. So the orange paste will turn like it's burnt into the wood. You want to do this in a well ventilated area because the smell of the wood does get a little strong. And then I just added a little ribbon to make it more decorative. And then for the last craft, we're going to use the same materials. But on this one, you're going to use a thing called chalk paste. And you're going to do the same thing with the silk screen transfer. You're just going to put it on there, and then you're going to take your chalk paste, squeegee it over, paint it over, pull that off, wash it, and then your design will be on your board. Now I did paint this one, the background white, and then I added some decorative little beads to it. All right, and that's all that I have. Next up we have Lakin from Lee County.
Hey everyone, so I'm Lakin Campbell. I'm the FCS agent in Lee County. So if you look, I'm going to do a full disclaimer. My theme is always a little tedious sometimes. So if you've been coming here for a while, you know that I've done the wine corks, we've done the fishing lures last year, we've done a lot of different things. But I will say this year I'm a little out of my league because I don't shoot any guns whatsoever. I've shot a BB gun and that's about it. So what we've got today are a few different shotgun shells and brass casings for the crafts. And as for my recipe that Nanette and Vicki are passing out, it's peanut clusters. So if you have a peanut allergy, this is probably not the recipe for you. But very easy. I like easy recipes. So if you look at it, I have a very easy and fast way. So the fast way is what's in your book, and it's if you put it in the microwave and make sure it's on 50% power, and that's a little bit of a faster way. If you've got a little more time, an easier way is to put everything in the slow cooker, and that's a good way to kind of make a bigger batch as well. I actually doubled the batch and put everything in. I put 2 cans of the Spanish peanuts in the bottom of the slow cooker, and then 2 bags of the chocolate chips, and then 1 whole bag of the butterscotch chips in there, and then put it on low for an hour, and then every 15 minutes I just kind of mix it to make sure the chocolate or anything didn't scorch. So as soon as that's up, I just scooped out and put it on some parchment paper on a cookie sheet, and then put it in the refrigerator to let it harden, and it was good to go. So very, very simple recipe to do, and like I said, it really didn't take a long time. I love a good easy recipe. So there is that one, and our first craft is going to be our little ornament. So I've got some brass casings on here, and they have a bunch of different calibers on there, so you can kind of find the size that you want, and make sure that they are all the same color. Some of them have a different finish on it, and just trying to make sure they're the same size. When I started, I didn't really realize that there were so many different sizes. So just to kind of give you an example, we've got a few different sizes because I've been collecting these for 2 years now, trying to get to do this craft, because I did not realize that a lot of people reloaded shotgun shells and a lot of their ammo. Didn't know that. So it's taken me a little bit to do it. But as I done the little ornament, I just found ones that I had enough of the same caliber on there and the same finish. I just laid it out to see how big that I wanted the tree to be. Then made a little stump at the bottom and just kind of done it a row at a time. Before I got to the top, I made sure to put my little loop on there, and I added a little tiny guinea feather just to kind of add a little something to it. And you can kind of switch up and put different items on there if you like. Now, I put the bottom part together with super glue. I loved the super glue. However, I'll probably talk a little bit more about it. It did not go as far as I would have liked it to have gone. So I had to use hot glue, and it is not done as well. It made it from not county to Letcher County without falling apart, but it keeps coming off. It does not want to stick to the brass too well. But so the top is actually held on with super glue, but I would try to use either maybe E6000 or a different type of glue to try to hold that on a little bit better. I have seen a few different ones where they put the string on the outside and didn't do the little trunk on the bottom, and just kind of held it together a little bit better. But you can kind of switch it up and change a little bit of the decorations as well. And they are fairly heavy. That's something to think of too, of the sturdiness on there, because it is a little heavy. So our next one is going to be a wreath. So this right here is what we've got. I actually did not buy any of the items on here except for my cardboard wreath form, and I could have just cut that out of some old cardboard that I had at the office. But what I started out with was one cardboard frame, and then I laid all the shotgun shells out to kind of see how I wanted it to lay out. And then I put the brass casings on top. And then before I started gluing all of the shotgun shells on there, I put a little bit of jute on the back, and then put another foam wreath on the back or cardboard wreath, just to make sure that it had a little extra support. And I did have a farmer stop by and gave me some guinea feathers, and then she also gave me some chicken feathers. I really wish I'd had some turkey feathers. I think that would have been very, very pretty to have had on here. And then I just kind of added some burlap on here, and you can kind of do some different things with the tails of the bow. I was kind of shoving up in there so you could see the feathers on there as well. So you kind of switch it up and put different decorations on there as well. I saw some that had some deer antlers on there as well. That could be something you could add. And then our last little craft is the monogram letter made out of the casings as well. So as you can see, I've used different brass casings on every one of these. It's just the way that I had the most of, because everyone that would come by to the office would start bringing them to me, because they knew I was collecting them. And I found out a lot of what not to do while I was doing this. But after I'd already started, I thought I should have printed out a nice little letter so I could have followed along and laid it out that way. Instead, I just had to do it by eye. So that is a good tip, to start out with something, a stencil to kind of use. And then I laid everything flat down and just kind of picked them up and started gradually gluing. I wish I would have used super glue or a stronger glue, because like I said, the hot glue just did not work as strongly as I would have liked, because this is extremely heavy. If I was to do this over again, I would use a smaller casing, a smaller caliber, because this is just extremely heavy. And something else about the hot glue, I don't like that you can see it on the back. So what I would do is, probably when I get home before I gift this, I will put some felt on the back and try to cover that up, because I really don't want anyone to see that. Plus it might help hold it together a little bit more. And you want to make sure you're staying even with it, because as you can see, it's a little curved. So that's not what you want. You want it to be able to stay up and stand. It did stand in Knott County, so I do know it stands. So, and I did have a question in an earlier county, how did you clean them? Because I was sitting in my office one day and I was sitting there trying to clean these up with some soap and some water, and I had a farmer come by and they laughed at me and said, put all that in a bag, and they took it home because they have a rock polisher that they use for their casings to clean and make sure it's nice and smooth. And it made a huge difference in what that looked like. So, I mean, obviously it doesn't do anything for the shotgun shells, but it really did help the brass casings really shine and look really well. But something you want to take in mind is that there are so many different sizes and different colors of all the different shotgun shells. So if you are looking to do something like this and you don't have anyone that really shoots or doesn't want to give up their shotgun shells, because like I said, they reuse them, because these can get expensive. I mean, this one right here is a 10 gauge and they can be pretty pricey. I did talk to some people from Fish and Wildlife one day. They came in after, of course, I'd already completed this, but they had mentioned that a lot of places they will have shooting ranges or something going on, a class, and sometimes they just throw the extras away because they don't have any use for them. So maybe you could talk to them, or maybe go to your sportsman's club. Maybe they would gladly give you some of what they have left over to try to get some of those kind of stored up. Because like I said, it took me 2 years to get to get enough to do what I needed to do. Okay, especially of the same color, same size. That's why I was getting the problems, was because everyone had a different color, different brand that they used, and I just never could get the right colors that I wanted. But all right, I believe that's all I have for you, and next up is Nanette Banks.
Hello, I'm Nanette Banks, and I am the FCS agent here in Letcher County. And the recipe that Vicki is passing out is called Christmas Puff, Marion Brock Puff Corn Munch is what it's called, sorry. And I had been off, as most of you know, and during that time off is when all of the information was due for the booklet to be turned in, all the crafts, all the recipes. Well, the recipes I had picked out, apparently Lakin and Kelsey had picked out the same ones. So I had to come up with some different ones once I got back in the middle of October. So this one, most of you, if you have been to the Sweets and Treats program, we had done this one in the past. So that was just the one I was going to fall back on. But it's so easy to make. It's just a bag of puff corn, the hulless popcorn, just one bag of that's butter flavor. Put that in a bowl, and then take a package of the vanilla chocolate bark, and then you break that up into the squares, put it in a microwave safe bowl, put it in your microwave at half power, and microwave it at 30-second intervals. And then after each time, just stir it until it's completely melted. Once it's melted, you go ahead and pour that on top of the puff corn, and toss it until it's coated. Lay some parchment paper down on your countertop on a sheet pan, and then just layer it on the top of the parchment paper where it's sort of flat. Now, if you want to add sprinkles, you can add sprinkles to that, and this is something that you can do for any holiday, because they have sprinkles for every holiday out there. You know, you can do St. Patrick's Day, you can do Valentine's Day, so this is the one that you can do all the time. But just make sure that you put the sprinkles on while the chocolate is still wet, and that way it will stick. And then after it completely dries, go ahead and break it up and just put it into an airtight container. It took me and Amanda on Monday to do about 9 batches, about 2 hours from start to end. So you can make this pretty quickly. And it's sort of addictive that you can, once you start eating it, you don't want to quit. Now, I did have another recipe in there. We did make this one just to see which one I wanted. This was going to be the one I fell back on if I did not like this one. I did like this one, but it was going to have to be made up every single day because the powdered sugar started falling off of the cranberries. But it's really, really simple to make. You just take a bag of fresh cranberries, wash them, and then you want to put them in cranberry ginger ale or plain ginger ale. Soak them overnight, and then after they've soaked overnight, you want to go ahead and drain them, and then put 2 cups of powdered sugar into a baggie and just shake it, and then just lay it on a sheet pan. Bake it at 200 degrees for 5 minutes, and that makes the powdered sugar adhere to the cranberry. They're delicious if you like cranberries, and they're really, really good that first day. The second day, they still were a little good. The powdered sugar was just falling off of it. Amanda did do some research, and it said that you could put it back into the oven for 5 more minutes, and it should make the powdered sugar stay back on. So, but if you want to try these, they're really, really good. The crafts that I chose are using tumbling blocks and shims. Like I said, I was off, so I did not make these because there was no way possible for me to get this made before I left, and did not get it back until it was already past due to turn it in. So Amanda over here, if you want to wave at Amanda, she is the one that made all of these. I've been telling everybody in every county she should be the one up here teaching it. I'm just telling you all what she done, and we have learned a few little things. So the first one are using these little blocks, and everybody has seen these blocks at the local store down the hill, but they do come. This is the cheap ones because they're all small, and you see they will come in 2 different colors, the brown and the very light. She did stain these before she started putting it together. But as you can see, these are 3 of the blocks that are on the bottom, and the short ends, you glue the short ends together. She used not crazy glue, she used hot glue and wood glue. Some of this is still, I'm having to re-glue every day, so probably another type of craft glue would have probably been better to use with this, and even little brads that you could put on here like a staple gun to staple it, each piece together would work too. But after you make the base, 3 glued together, then you're going to take 5 of the tumbling blocks and glue them on top of each other. But make sure that when you are doing this, that there is the same space in each one. That way you're not having wider and less over here. That way it will be even. And she did make this one a little bit wider and higher, but it was not very stable. That's why it ended up just being 3 across and 5 up. So once you get both of those put together, let them dry, then you're going to adhere it to the base. And after that, she just took we had stars here, a bag of stars that we bought that has different sizes in it. She painted the star green, had little wooden beads that she painted gold, and then we just had some little sprigs that we just separated and glued on here to decorate it. Now if you wanted to make this a little smaller, you could, and on the bead there's a hole. You can put thread through it, string, and make it as an ornament if you wanted to do that. So very simple to do, just a little time consuming. The second one is this one, and I'm going to be very, very gentle because I've already glued it. As you can see, there's lots and lots of glue. She took 2 of the larger tumbling blocks, which are these right here, the larger ones, and she did stain these. As you can see, they're 2 different colors. She did stain them, and then using the wood glue, the hot glue, glued them together just like she did on the smaller one, but on the bottom, 2 of the long sides are glued together to make the base wide, and then she done 4 across the bottom, short sides glued together, and then glued it on top of the base, and then just made the sides, and like I said, the spacing needs to be the same all the way down on both sides. So you will have to measure a little bit, make a pencil mark, and that you know where to glue. And then after that, she laid it down, and I'm going to put it down before I start losing balls. She laid it down and then just started hot gluing little ornaments that you can buy at different places, different sizes. As you can see, there's small ones, there's a little bit bigger ones, and then just space them in there, glue them together. And as you can see, I've had to glue for the last couple days. But it's the same concept, pretty easy. And for the most part, it has stayed together pretty well. And then just a larger size ornament on the top. If you didn't want to put an ornament, you could put a bow, you put some little picks on there, decorate it the way you want. And then the next ones are these folded trees. How many people have made these in the past? Have made these in the past. Okay. As you can see on each end of the table, there are folded trees that I bought. We did not make those. But that's where I got the concept from, was from these little folded trees. But you just have cardstock, scrapbook paper, and you can make them in different sizes. Now you do have the pattern for 2 sizes in your handout. As you can see, for this one, it's this size. If you want to make this one, it's this size right here. And then if you want to make the other one, it's this size. So that right there is what it is. And then if you want to make the bigger one, you just have to blow up one of the patterns, blow it up as big as you want to make it. Now it depends on how full you want it. As you can see, these have a different number of pieces of paper that's been glued together. So as you can see, this one's fuller. One has 5, one has 7 pieces glued together. And when I am saying this is what we're talking about. This is a piece of scrapbook paper. We took the pattern, traced it onto the scrapbook paper. Then after you cut it out, you want to take your pattern, fold it in half. So you're going to do that with however many pieces you want. Right here, Amanda cut me out 4. So you're going to fold them in half, right sides together. So you remember, right sides together. Then you're going to glue this piece to this piece. So you're going to glue them on top of each other. You see how I'm doing this? And then glue the next one on top. Then glue the next one on top. So you're going to have them like that. And then once you get done gluing them, then you are going to glue the last 2 pieces together. And that's what's going to make this. Does everybody understand that? So it's just very, very simple to do. If you do not want it to stay glued together, you know, because right here all of these are glued and you can't hardly store them flat, you can use some type of paper clip or Velcro, something like that that you can take apart and then close it and store it. If you want to make an ornament, you just have to, before you glue the last 2 sides together, put your string down in there, glue it on there, and then you have ornaments. Neat little thing to make with kids, to make at Sunday school, any of these little activities that you're doing with kids or your grandkids, something easy that they can do. And as you can see on these little ones, you can buy scrapbook paper. It will do this. It should do this one too. So you can use this size and have all kinds of different patterns if you wanted to do all kinds. So, but this is the paper that I had bought. There's a foil paper and then just a regular sheet, and I got these on half price at the local craft store. And then the last 2 items I have, everybody know what shims are? Okay, so here's what shims are. It's what we use to level up something, and this is what they look like. This one right here, as you can see, this is a little thinner on that end and thicker on this end. So to make the base, what you're going to do on the base, you're going to take the 2 thin ends, put a thick end on each end, and that's going to make it level to where you can make the base. So let's do this one. As you can see, these are 2 shims put together, and they're thick end, and then the thin ends are in the middle, and then you just glue them together. And then it's the same concept as the tumbling blocks. You are going to space and glue each of the shims together. Thick end at the bottom, thin ends at the top. And once that is all glued together, she just took ribbon and cut and glued down each side just to give it some color and to decorate it. You could paint these, you could stain these, you can do whatever you want to them, but this is just what we had done. We had ribbon here at the office that was donated, and we went ahead and she just made a bow, glued it onto the top, and then the ornament is, oops, watch, it's not going to stand up. Okay, whoa, sorry, I'm going to have to hold that. Of course, you know, for TV it's not going to stand up. Okay, there we go. So what these are is just these ornaments that come 6 to a pack that were already made, and as you can see, this is what they look like. I got them on half price, so I paid $1.25 for 6 of these ornaments. She did paint or stain. Which one did you do? Paint one side, and so if you don't want to decoupage like what Kelsey did, you can just paint it and then write a name on it and have it make these smaller too if you wanted to, but you can put names on it. You can put joy, peace, love, whatever you want to on it. But what we done on this one, we took a napkin, and like Kelsey said, you are going to separate the napkin, take the back layer off, you're going to put some decoupage on the ornament, and then you are going to put this on top, decoupage, and then just use a sandpaper and get the edges off. You can paint around the edges. She went ahead and just used the polka dot on the back and decoupage the back also. But like I said, you could paint it. You can just put a napkin on the front and paint the back, whichever one you prefer to do. And then this one right here is probably my favorite. It's the shims again, but this time she used 4 shims, 2 here and then 2 back here to make the base wider. And that's because we decorated the bottom of it, so you had to have it wider. Same concept, but if you notice on this one and this one, the shims are separated at different, this one on my left hand is, the shims are glued closer than these right here. So these right here are a little further apart than this one. So let me see if I can get that to stop again. And so she just glued those together. Same principle, let this dry first, put these together on both sides, let it dry, then attach it to the base. And after you attach it to the base, I found these little ornaments at a craft store, and we just used that to decorate the bottom because we liked the woodsy look and it went with the office. So I went ahead and just glued that to the bottom, had some little picks and cut them up, put them on here, had some little, these are just little snowflakes. She glued those on. Pack of the stars that we had from here, and she took the big one, painted it, and then put a little snowflake on the top. But you can decorate these any way you want, but very simple and fairly inexpensive to do. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so next up is Vicki Boggs from Leslie County.
Hi, I'm Vicki Boggs. I'm with Leslie County Extension, and we're over halfway finished with our roadshow. So I know you all are having a lot of fun seeing all these ideas, and we've had a lot of fun putting it together and a lot of help, like Nanette was saying. I also had help at my office, so we can't do it without our team. Well, first thing in the booklet is the toffee, and that's the recipe that I put together this year to share with you all. If you have a nut allergy, just let Kelsey know, or Andrew. They have an option that has no nuts. So just let them know, and there is some toffee with no nuts. So the recipe is very simple. Ingredients, you've got chopped walnuts or almonds, which are optional, and you can leave those out or you can add them in. 1/2 cup of butter, 3/4 cup of packed brown sugar. I used the light brown sugar. And 1/2 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips, and that's to put on top. That's the top layer. So the directions: butter your 8x8 dish. I used a glass dish. You could use a metal dish. Also, a tip on that: if you want to use a 9x13 pan, it's a little easier to get the toffee to come out of the pan once it is hardened, okay? So you cook your butter and your brown sugar in the small saucepan. It's better to use a non-stick saucepan. It comes out a little easier. And you cook that for about 6 to 7 minutes after bringing it to a boil and cooking it at a kind of a medium-high heat. And then you'll notice that it will be turning darker. And that's when it is done. Now, also, if you have a food thermometer, digital or even just a candy thermometer, you can put that in there and make sure that you're at least at about 300 or 310 degrees. That's your hard crack, and that's toffee. It's about like eating a Heath bar. It's crunchy. The nuts make it a little easier to eat, I think. Easier on our teeth. So you put it in the refrigerator, you let it cool overnight is ideal, and then you just take it out of the pan and just break it apart into pieces any size. It makes about a pound. It would be a very good candy to make ahead of time and just have ready for your guests. All righty. Any questions on the toffee? Okay. So the first item I want to share with you is the centerpiece. It's the first one pictured. And I've got 3 candles here, and I put them in little glass cylinders simply because I had these cylinders on hand, and they were lonely, so we gave them a candle. So it's got 3 candles, all different sizes, and they are battery operated with a remote. We took our large cookie slice, a friend with a chainsaw, and an oak tree. So this is fresh from the forest. And I didn't spray it or anything, it's just the natural wood tree. So that's most of my theme is wood. So what we done, we chose some little picks that were decorative. And you could choose any season, any color, any kind. And we just cut them off a little bit and we stapled them on. Now you could certainly use hot glue and glue them on if you don't want to use a staple gun, but the staple gun really makes them pretty secure. You could also use fresh greens if you have evergreens growing around, or holly, the rhododendron. A lot of things are still evergreen, and you could use that here too. So your choice there. Be great for a centerpiece. Be great just to put on an occasional table. Whatever you want to use it for. Now, beside of the centerpiece, we've got the little deer. And they started off black when we first got them from the store. And we added a little bit of rub-and buff. Now, I'd never used rub-and buff, but it comes in a little tube. You can get it at hobby shops and different places. And just get a little paintbrush, or you could have gloves on your hands and just rub a little bit on. Let it dry, and then take a little cloth or even a paper towel and just buff it a little bit. And it shines it up and gives it that little bit of a textured, glazy look. This is called gold leaf color. I'm sure it's in a lot of colors. I know you can get it in silver and probably a lot of different colors. So whatever color you need to accent with. You could use this on picture frames. You could use it on a lot of different things that you want to add a little bit of color. Okay. So our next item is just simply the wooden holiday art accents. And so the peace plaque and the joy plaque are made from scrap wood. How many of you all know someone who has redone a deck or a porch, and they might have some little pieces of wood left over? Well, we had to do that at our house, so we had lots of wood. So our art club had made these little accent pieces during the fall of the year. So they had fall on one side and joy on the other, and then harvest and peace. So you could use them at different times. If you know someone who has a cricket, you could just ask them to make you a nice little sticker to go on it. Or if you're very gifted and you have some acrylic paint, you could just paint it on yourself. and then you could paint over it and change it later. So it's very versatile, very easy. You can just set them around. You could tuck them in the side of your centerpiece, or you could put them on a little easel to lift them up a little bit. You could even hang them on the wall by putting a little hanger on the back. So lots of things you could do with this wood to repurpose it. Okay, my last item again is wood, and just some scrap 4x4s. That's just some pieces of wood, and we decided to make these into Christmas presents. So we've got 3 sizes, and it just makes a really nice look to have all 3 sizes be a different height. So you can just cut them whatever height you want. They could be taller, shorter, however you want your trio to be, or you can make just one little present. But we painted them white. You could paint them lots of different colors. We used acrylic paint. You can pick it up a lot of different places. And then after it dried, we took our ribbon and wrapped it, and we just wrapped it up onto the top, and again we used the staple gun. You could use hot glue easily. And then after we got the ribbon on both sides, all stapled in place, we then added the extra pieces on top and cut the little design, the little V-shaped design, to kind of give it an extra look. It's got the little wire in the middle, or on the edges of the ribbon, and it makes it easy to shape these, give them a little bit of a lift and a poof. And then last we added the little holiday pick, and we just took those and we cut the end off, and again we used the staple gun. So they're very secure. It's been easy to travel with so far, and this is a nice accent. You could have it for a centerpiece, you could have it inside, you could have it outside on a porch. You could also do these in lots of colors for lots of seasons. Red, white, and blue. I think someone mentioned that Breathitt County would be a good thing to make. Orange for pumpkins. So the sky will be the limit on what you could do with these little 4x4 blocks. Okay? Any questions on any of the crafts or the recipe?
I thought that was foam.
It looks like styrofoam, doesn't it? Because it's white.
I thought it was foam.
Yeah, and you actually could use foam.
From here, it looks like foam.
Anything else? Okay, that is what I have.
My name is Andrew Warren. I'm the FCS agent for Wolfe County. And for my recipe and craft, I chose to do a cheese ball, and I chose to do wooden log snowmen. So the big focus on this was cost effectiveness, resourcefulness, something you can make at home easy. And then the cheese ball is a very low ingredient count thing you can make and bring to parties. And so the cheese ball consists of just 2 8-ounce boxes of cream cheese, 2 cups of finely shredded cheddar cheese, and then 1 packet of dry Italian dressing and recipe mix. And you can also add on chopped nuts. It looks a little bit better. And I like them on mine, but I just didn't add it just in case there were any concerns with nut allergies. So it's really simple, just a 3 ingredient recipe, and that'll make enough for this whole room, that right there. So that was just 1 cheese ball. And then for the craft piece, I did 2 different types of snowmen. The most difficult thing you'll come across with making this snowman is finding the right size pieces where they increasingly get smaller and smaller. I came across the issue of having the middle piece be almost the same size and width as the base piece, and I was probably working with about 20 or so different log pieces. So that's the main issue with it, but other than that, it's fairly easy. I just took a white spray paint. You'll see many different options at the store, including like a glossy finish, satin. I just did the plain white, and I sprayed it on once. I kind of gave it a little mist of a spray. I didn't want to totally cover it, or you'll have more of a plain white look. But I wanted the wood to kind of pop out still and give it that rustic, woodsy look. So I sprayed on a sealant afterwards, And the cool thing about this is that you can really customize your snowmen depending on what types of wood you use. So this one on the base here, this piece has a lot of bark, and then the one in the middle, the bark had already come off of it, so it has a thinner look. And then on the top I used a chunk of walnut tree, and you can really see how defined the bark is on that, and it kind of gives it some high detail once you spray it on there, and you can see all the woodsy look to it. So you can kind of customize it to your liking. And then I've also seen people actually rotate this whole piece where the center cut is facing you, and then from the top of the bottom they'll give it a little slice where you can lay the next piece on and then slice that piece at the top. So you'll have 3 stacking that are standing on their spine, and you can either attach buttons to it or draw faces on it. But you can really customize these. And then like with this one as well, I'll show you all closer. I just used a 1-piece log cut, and I thought this was really cool because they call this lichen, I believe, and it's like a fungus that grows on a tree. And so I thought once I sprayed it with spray paint, it would look pretty cool, like it has snow on it. So it turned out pretty good. And then I repurposed like a thrifted dollar primitive looking snowman, and I cut the nose off of that and attached it to this. And that's also where the hat came from for the larger snowman too. So you can get really creative with it, and it's affordable. Just find something and thrift it and repurpose it and put it with these snowmen. And so I just grabbed 2 limbs and I broke them off and attached them. Now the one thing you probably will need is an impact drill. I tried using a normal drill and screwed it in at a diagonal, but it has the issues of getting stuck, so you want something with a little bit more torque, and it'll drill down into about 1 to 2 inches, which is what you need. So you don't even, like these aren't even glued in there, they just stay. But if you don't have that, you can still just glue the arms on the sides with probably some sort of epoxy glue. I've tried using wood glue, but like on the nose here, it didn't work out very well. So I ended up drilling sort of a hole in here, put it in there, and then used like hot glue. But I would say epoxy glue would probably be your best bet. And speaking of the nose, I used, you want to make sure that you have a sharp hatchet. That just makes it easier on you. The less times you're going to have to risk cutting your finger off. But I just stuck it on the base of one of these log pieces, and I just kind of chopped it like that till I got a fine point and kind of some definition. Then I spray painted that just a natural orange. And then finally I've got raisins for the eyes. But this is just an example of the things you can thrift and kind of accent your piece. Like these are just $2 lights, but it makes it look a lot nicer, and it kind of gives it some detail to it. But that's about all I did for this. I have a scarf on here that's been thrifted and repurposed as well. So it's fairly cheap to do, just like the cheese ball. You can use most of the ingredients and the things that you already have already. So, any questions?
Thank you all for attending this year's Holiday Roadshow. I hope you all got some good ideas and some recipes. If you were not able to attend, you can stop by the Letcher County Extension Office and pick up a booklet, or you can call 606-633-2362 to get more information. Thank you.